Okay, let's bring this committee of the whole meeting to order for February the 10th, 2025. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held in the heart of the traditional territory of our friends, neighbors, and Treaty 8 partners of the Fort Nelson First Nation and the Prophet River First Nation. We further recognize the rights provided to the partners in the treaty, and we also celebrate the contributions and presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Councilor, any additions to this meeting? Go ahead.
I'd like to just start a discussion on elks. Except that's not a plural of elk, wild ones, four-legged ones. So I'd like to have a discussion around the effect of the elks in the area, the elk in the area. So from a farmer point of view.
Okay, let's put that in 7.1. Staff, do you have anything? Come here. Thank you. Is there any public who wish to comment on today's meeting? Gallery, online? No? Okay. Everybody's okay with the agenda with that addition? Okay. So today I'm happy to welcome Tom as a delegation to talk about the project that they're doing at Skooks Landing. I know they've been working hard at it for several years now, and Tom's here to give us a bit of an update. So Tom, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Okay, good evening. Anyway, I know most of you are probably aware of Skooks Landing, but I'll give you a bit of a background and what we have done so far up to date and what we want to do in the future. It's a little lengthy, but I'll zip along as quick as I can here. Okay, Skooks Landing has been used for years as the only feasible site to launch boats within the entire area. It is also the only site that enables river access into the Meskwakachika by way of the Kachika, Gataga, Frog, and Turnagain river systems. The existing site at this time has no area to park trucks and boat trailers. In the past, everyone just parked on the riverbank, and this area flooded several times, involving a lot of the parked vehicles. This created a severe safety and environmental hazard. The site also has no facilities right now, such as toilets, garbage bins, and fire pits for people launching boats and staging for activities. In the past, Mr. Jim Little, who was with BC Lands Department, spent many years working to get this site designated as a rec site. Since 2017, the Casca Nation, Toad River Area Club, Northeast BC Wildlife Fund, the Fort St. John River Rats, and the Province of BC Recreation Sites and Trail, as well as Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, have been working together to establish a rec site at Skooks Landing. Skooks Landing holds significant culture and recreational value for our region. It is a place where First Nation community members, resident hunters, and guide outfitters all gather to connect with nature and to engage in outdoor activities and to celebrate a shared heritage. The proposed project aims to develop infrastructure and amenities that will improve access to the site, will ensure its long-term sustainability and environmental integrity. This will include clearing, leveling, and grading the site and the road, and installing outdoor toilets, picnic tables, garbage bins, fire pits, RV parking area, and interpretive signage. Traditional Casca First Nation knowledge and practices will be incorporated into the design and the management of the site. This will foster cultural awareness and appreciation among all visitors. We believe that the recreation site at Skooks Landing will not only benefit First Nations and local residents, it'll also provide all visitors with a positive and educational experience while in our region. Phase 1. After waiting for several years, we finally received on October 17, 2024, government approval to start Phase 1 of this project. Phase 1 consisted of mobbing in donated equipment to clear, pile, and burn brush on the 2-hectare site. The equipment was generously donated by Greg Wilson with Tracker Contracting and Cole Wilson with Black Star Resources. Additional expenses were covered by cash donations from Fort St. John Rod and Gun Club, Northeast BC Wildlife Fund, Scott Ebert, and Jim Little from Fort St. John. Jim and Tom Fulton also fully donated supervision consisting of 11 days of our time to accompany the archaeological crew doing the 2017 ARC study, also to go with a survey crew surveying the site, as well as the supervision of all aspects of phase one. Labor for burning the piles and slashing was fully donated by the Kaska Nation. This consisted of 5 members of the Lower Post Smoke Walkers. These men were all very professional, excellent workers. Having them donate this crew was a win-win for this project. Vanessa Law with the Kaska First Nations and all other members have been excellent to work with throughout all phases of this project. All burn sites, when we were done with phase one, was closely monitored to make sure all piles were extinguished and cold. As the weather was turning, we were exceeding our allotted time on our donated equipment. We had to pull out. At this time, you can show the PowerPoint, and then I'll give some more comments after that.
Okay, Tom, the PowerPoint's up.
Yeah, just go ahead and go through it. There's no volume on it or anything, or no talking.
Right. Right. I think you spoke pretty much all the way down to phase two.
Yeah, that's got a few of the pictures of what we were doing in phase one and everything on it too there, so.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and just go to the end of then I'll give you phase two. These are the Lower Post Smoke Walkers here. They're the local firefighting, wild firefighting crew that they've just developed up there.
Right.
Really a good bunch.
Okay.
All right, I'll just continue on here there now. After adding up all the costs to do phase one, it came in 35% higher than our original estimate. This was due to the late start, the remote distance of the project, and higher subsistence costs than we originally estimated. We will have to adjust the cost of the original estimate for phase two by at least 35%. Estimated cost for phase two is now estimated at the worst case scenario of $298,000. This is based on no donated equipment. The estimate may be significantly less after we do additional survey work and more test holes. When we were doing phase one, we found that there was shale material in several of the test holes within a couple feet of the surface. We may be able to save up to 60 to 70K if we can obtain enough suitable shell material on site to cap with. This will greatly reduce the amount of gravel needed. Additional gravel needed will come from the government pit across the highway from Skooks. We have on hand right now about 100K in pledged donations of equipment and cash to put towards the additional survey and test hole work this spring and towards phase two costs. Prior to any work on phase two, we suggest the following. Go back this spring after the frost is out with an excavator and check all areas where piles were burnt for holdover. Then dig several test holes throughout the site to establish where suitable shale material is available for capping roads in the parking area. We would also like to take back in the surveyors to shoot elevations to determine the ideal area within the 2-hectare site to build roads and parking sites. The survey will allow us to do a much more detailed site plan for construction. This will enable us to do a much closer revised cost estimate for phase 2. Phase 2 will only proceed once we have received sufficient funding along with donated equipment to totally complete the total project, even if we have to put it off till 2026. We have received letters of support to proceed with phase 2 from the Kaska First Nation, Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, Northeast BC Wildlife Fund, Toad River Area Club, Fort St. John Rod and Gun Club, Fort St. John River Rats, BC Recreation Sites and Trails, and Wild Sheep Society of BC. Phase 3 will consist of installing outdoor toilets, picnic tables, and garbage bins, an RV parking area, and interpretive signage. Denise Bowie with Recreation Sites and Trails indicated they might be able to supply some of these items. We are also working with Northern Rockies Regional Municipality to acquire and apply for any grant opportunities that they can help us find. Denise Bowie with Recreation Sites and Trails is also looking into some possible capital cost funding from the government for this project. As project leads, we would greatly appreciate any and all help with donations or grant opportunities that anyone can come up with to help us out. Thanks from Jim Fulton, President of Toad River Area Club and President of Northeastern BC Wildlife Fund, and Tom Fulton, Director of Special Projects with Northeastern BC Wildlife Fund and Director of Toad River Area Club Planning Committee. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Tom, for that presentation. Are there any questions from council? Go ahead. Councilor Enox has a comment.
I just need to thank you, Tom and Jim. Skooks has always had a soft spot in our heart. Anybody that's lived on the highway, great job. I can't wait to see when it's done.
Thank you. Yes, we're hoping we can come up with the funding to get it finished.
Councilor Roper has a question, comment?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the presentation as well as all the hard work that you guys have done on the project. Do you have a specific ask for the municipality, or are you just looking for general support at this time?
Well, mainly what we've been working with Hillary there on some of the grant opportunities and that. So hopefully that, she's able to come up with some opportunities that will fit our project. And yeah, any other support that you can give us will be great.
Yeah, Tom, it's Rob. You say you've got $100,000 secured in time and some cash. Are you likely, does that cover the equipment time? Is it really cash that you need the rest of the way? Or are you expecting more equipment time to be donated? And well, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're hoping that we'll get a lot more equipment donated. I know Rick Seidel there has indicated that he'd be willing to donate some equipment. We've got several other contractors in Fort St. John that have said that, one will supply a low bed and one will supply a small excavator and stuff. We've also got a $25,000 donation from Wild Sheep Society. We've got $25,000 donation from Northeast BC Wildlife Fund. So, we're hoping to get more donated equipment, but it's so hard to do a cost estimate without donated equipment, just saying what it'd cost if we had to put this up for tenders. And I think we're pretty close to it. It's just so remote there that the mob and demob and any subsistence you do it, like we stayed at Cool River Resort there, and everything's pretty pricey up there.
Right. Yeah, I was just trying to put the numbers together because a little bit, you talked about 298,000, 100 already in place, 60,000 maybe you can get out of it if you've got some shale up there. So I'm just trying to figure out, what you're short. Have you got an idea there?
At this time, I think, we'd be short probably 150,000. The ideal thing would be if Parks and Recreation could come through with a capital cost to fund the whole thing, and then we could add our cash we have, and then put it up for tenders. But at this time, they're just with a shuffle in government and the new government coming in and stuff. Denise didn't know where they might be able to go with that.
Right. So you're you're exploring that avenue as well as if the province. Yeah, and I mean, and if they do, then you've got money left over to move over to phase 3, hopefully.
Well, that's hopefully at this time.
Yeah.
Denise said they definitely had some picnic, like they did the same thing when we did the Toad River boat launch. They supplied picnic tables and an outhouse. And she kind of indicated that they had the money to do that, but at this time she was still digging into capital costs to do phase 2.
Right. Okay, well, I don't see any more hands up, so thank you very much for the presentation and the request, I guess, to some degree. And you know, we'll certainly take it under advisement when we're looking at our budget, and our staff will be looking for any grants that are out there, you know, to try to assist. I think it's a great project and I certainly appreciate it. Oh, I did have one question that we sent some letters of thanks out for folks that did phase 1. Were we able to get everybody? Because I don't remember signing a letter to Casca, but I could be wrong. Were they on the list?
Yeah, they were on the list. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Then I'm just drawing. Yeah, I'm just drawing a blank on it then. I'm sure our staff put that all together, but okay. As long as nobody's feeling like we left them out, you know, in the thanks, because it's important to us that you know, people are doing this kind of work are recognized for it. So
I'll check
So
back
thanks,
through
Tom.
my list of donators that I sent there for you to send the letters to, and I'll make sure that they were on it. I'm sure they were.
okay, good. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, that brings us to reports. There's a report here on the Andy Bailey Park improvements update. Johnny's here to talk to us about that. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I wanted to bring forward this report with an update on the updated design for Andy Bailey Regional Park. As you'll see, it is quite substantially changed from when the last time I sat here. We were very hopeful with a lot of things, and we came up with a great design. But once we got into it and got through our archaeological study, we found there were some areas that were discovered that had some significance out there. So working with that and the archaeological group, we went back to our designers and made some adjustments to the design to try and get as much as we could done in this by taking the first recommendation from their report, which was avoiding the areas that they found that had some historic artifacts and cultural significance. So with that, I included in there an attachment with 2 of the drawings, one of the big overview and then one kind of zoomed in of the focus group. But the big portion of it is where the finds was on the beach. So I know your first thought is probably, what are we doing with the sand? Because we in this project, we can't add that right now. But there is a lot of other things that we can get done within this and still utilize and maximize the grant that we have secured and already extended to end of September of this year. So I felt it was good to bring it forward to you guys, get your eyes on it and have a chance to take a look. And yeah, any feedback, I can try and answer some questions or any other thoughts.
Thanks, Johnny.
No problem.
Questions? Go ahead.
So what kind of things did you find on the beach?
I figured that was a good one. So there's a pretty big report, which I didn't include, but they had okay. Thank you, Lisa, for saving my bacon. Items of cultural significance. Okay. Perfect.
Go ahead.
So we paid for an archaeology study to get done, so the taxpayers paid for it, but the taxpayers aren't allowed to know what was found? I'm guessing is that what we're figuring? Why is that? I just, we've had it of Andy Baylor Park there forever. It's just interested in what they found, but I guess we don't get to know.
Well, that's good information that I didn't know, and I'm gonna actually bring Lisa to my next report because that was pretty awesome. A good save there.
Counselor Roper, please.
Just a comment, I do know, quite a few residents were excited about the sand and developing the beach. It's quite muddy sometimes. If there ever was an opportunity or a workaround, I don't know what's there, but I don't know what sand makes a
Yeah.
difference if it's on top of it but if there is an opportunity to, move past that, it would be a good thing, I think.
So as the report came back, it's not impossible to do any works within that area potentially, or even add sand, that kind of thing. But what it would require was a further, more extensive archaeological assessment and study. And then I'm gonna look to make sure I don't get the wording wrong. There is an application you have to put to the cultural archaeological to get that work done. So they would have to approve that at that time as well. And then you have to do the mitigation of those, any things that they did find, they would have to take, categorize, put them into whatever they do with them, which I'm not super familiar with, but they would have to do all those steps as well in order for us to proceed with any work on that. So last time we did meet, there was a potential where we could do this project in phases as well, because the grant wasn't going to cover the full project as it was. The whole project came out right around $980,000, and the grant was only $538,000. So with this, we can still proceed with the portion of the project that could be grant funded, and with the majority of the work happening kind of more closer to the boat launch. And then we can look at other options for the rest of the park as we continue.
Counselor Goey? Hold it up because it's terrible. I agree. with you.
Very disappointing. So I guess I'm wondering, given the results of the archaeological study, is it worth continuing to invest in this site as a recreation site if we are going to be severely hampered in what we can do?
From my perspective, I think it's still a viable option to do all of these upgrades, because it's going to provide some good upgrades to a lot of the amenities that are already there. And it does get a fair bit of use from locals as well as travelers. So the things like the upgraded bathrooms that'll now be accessible, as well as some of the pathways to there so that people can access them with mobility challenges. A little bit of upgrade to there's a couple of the campsites up at the top that will get a little bit more gravel. Some signage, some additional gravel down by the boat launch area where there can be some additional parking for people with mobility challenges. And then the changing structure so that people can have a place to change that's not the outhouse. And then also the screened-in bug shelter, which people were quite happy to see, because sometimes it does get pretty buggy in there.
So does that leave out the beach mat?
So the beach mat would be a separate thing. We would have to purchase that.
And then the accessible dock, that would be a separate,
The dock is still included.
is
yeah.
included in this phase of it.
Mhm.
And then I guess my other question was, if we can't have sand, are there alternatives? Like, I mean, it's for anybody that spent any time out there, it gets really weedy. It's not a very nice place to be sitting sometimes. So, I mean, I don't know if there are options, but could we investigate? Are there mat overlays that we can put over top, or like, I don't know.
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. I think as it is, there's still potential we could do the sand, but there may be all other things that we could do as well that would not cause the ground disturbance that would impact the archaeological sites. So we can definitely explore some of those.
Okay, and then is there still gonna be fire pits on the beach level?
So there's
Or
still
is that-
everything that's there can stay. Like, we don't have to pull out the picnic tables on fire pits or nothing like that. We don't have to
Well, all
change
the
anything
fire
that's
pits are
there.
gone. People stole them, so. We were gonna put in new ones, remember? But
Yeah.
they were gonna have to
Yeah.
be
I think there's still a couple there that are just really sunken down that might need a little bit of TLC.
So,
Maybe for-
so we're not gonna be able to get new ones then?
Not at this time. No. But I think we can fix up the ones that we do have.
Okay.
So I'll go to staff, where are we in the process of approvals yeah, just remind me where we are. Have we approved what's going on there already? Because these drawings don't tell me what's happening now. So I think we need a new drawing with respect to what you're envisioning for what's gonna happen and go forward. I tend to agree with Councillor Growing. I wonder about whether or not we should be putting a ton of money into something that we're not able to expand or use. It's probably time to bring the nation in. I don't know if the nation has the ability to help us with these archaeological sites. To help us get past some of the regulations if that's necessary. In order for us to be able to move, to a bigger project. I have so many questions about how to move forward after this. So, yeah, so I'm interested. I see your light on.
So all this, so the reason for bringing the update to council was because the project itself is steaming ahead because of the grant funding which councils approved. What we did know originally is we had more scope in the project than we actually had funds from a grant perspective. And we're looking at, as we got further into the detailed design part of that, of course, was the ARC study, which is a requirement. We wanted to provide the council the update more on just there's items that are being omitted as part of the scope of work because of the results of the ARC study. There's more work that can be done as part of the ARC process. We just have to dig into to figure out what that looks like next and what the options may or may not be, like when it comes to what may or not be some options for sand and whatnot. The ARC study basically determines that there's items and evidence of cultural significance that requires further investigation and further work to be done, right? So we're not quite sure what the scope of that would look like at this point or what the options are even to navigate through what the various opportunities are to fulfill some of the wishes or scope or future scope for that matter, because we don't really have a good understanding what that full piece looks like based on what we currently have. So it's just the key piece. The intent would be to bring back maps or drawings of what we have, what it would look like. Essentially, this is outlining what we've shown council before in the previous presentations, minus what has been listed in the report, essentially.
Yeah.
So
So it's hard to tell exactly what it is, and what the changes are. I mean, if you can't do certain things, that means there's money left. So are we increasing are we bettering the things that we've got, or are we holding that back to do another ARC study? Is there, I still would like to know what the nations say about that being an ARC site and how interested they are in keeping it that way. I think they're our partners and there's that opportunity to have that discussion with them, right? If or does all of a sudden does the province take over and there's an ARC something, whatever it is, and so even the nation doesn't get an opportunity to change that designation or assist us with moving forward with the project. So yeah, I'd like to have answers to all of that.
we can bring another report back to council that outlines what the ARC study means and what the process is. It's a fairly defined process when it comes to archaeology studies, right? And different phases of them.
Yeah, and what's it do to the budget of it, right? So yeah, we've got some ideas of what the changes look like, but I think we all approved it based on the certain design, and I think we probably should really have a look at the whole thing again. Councillor Andrews, please.
Was the whole site checked, or are these the only issues? Sorry, not issues, but areas with significance?
So they went through the site based on the design that we had,
Yeah.
and they do what they call shovel tests, where they test little areas to get a scope of the overall broad scope. And out of that, they found some sites within those tests. So then
Okay.
they marked those, indicate them for areas to avoid, and then they leave a buffer of a designated size.
I just know at one point we were discussing adding more campus sites on this. So I was just curious, thinking along the lines of Councillor Gerwing, if we're going to invest in this, are these the only areas we have? Because that would help, change my mind as well.
There's still potential to add. So where we were potentially adding campsites was on the top side, where it was in the bush, which was not, or they did not find anything. the part with that was that stuff up there was outside of the scope of the grant anyway, so that would have been a budgetary ask as well.
Hmm.
So there's potential we could still go within that, but we would need to go through the budget process in order to come up with funds for that, or determine a place where we can find additional grant funding or those types of things.
Okay. Any other questions? So wait and see, I guess. More to come. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to new business. And the discussion that Councillor Souls would like to have or put on the floor about elk or elks, as he put it. As soon as you said
Yeah.
elks, I was
No,
thinking, I was
serious.
thinking,
I know. I thought of leaving it with Elks because then we'd be thinking we're talking about a building in town.
Yeah, yeah.
But even that isn't, it's a gray area in the English language as to whether that's a plural of elk or elks or what it is. So anyway, the real live four-legged ones. The one of the side effects of the historical development in this area, first of all, elk are not native to this area. It's an invasive species, if you want to call it. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad idea, but the elk are not native to the area. And so just from a historical point of view, there was quite a bit of effort put into the establishing of elk in the Tashodi Valley and up the Muskwa and various places in Toad River in the earlier days, mostly in the 70s and 80s. And it kind of along with that went a lot of range burning and so on to create the habitat, and aerial seeding as well to create the grass, the type of grass that was really compatible with the livestock, the wild animals and so on. And so we reached what we now have what we call the Serengeti of the North, because it was such a successful, both adding the elk to the existing wildlife that was already in that, in the trench there, was really quite successful to make a high level not a game preserve, but like a natural game preserve. With the reluctance over the years, though, now subsequently since about the mid-90s, the idea of range burning has become taken off the table. We're working on that. I know that the Northeast, the Toad River Group are working on that, and a number of others are. But with that taken off the table, a lot of the land that had been converted into not grassland, but semi-grassland for grazing is now growing back up into deciduous trees, aspen and birch and so on. And the grass is disappearing. And so, of course, the elk, both by virtue of the breeding cycle and the growth in the herds, they've spread out all over it. So we started to see that about 10 years ago. You remember the amount of elk we used to see in Doug Gordon's fields in the fall, and that was pretty well isolated. That was the impact of them. They'd show up long after the farming was done in a year, and they would graze in the second growth on the hay fields and so on. Well, they have spread out now to actually, this is actually the first year we've been watching them every year and being really diligent to not let them find our haystacks. But this year now they've basically found all of the farmers' haystacks. And I know that I personally, on the one farm of ours, we hosted 170 elk for about 5 weeks grazing our second cut, what would have been second cut feed for livestock, and they graze it. And so there's quite a bit of pressure being put on them. And I know that right now it's a little bit of a crisis for some of the farmers, because you can't have the elk in your haystack now and you still have cattle to feed for the rest of the winter. They destroy haystacks. They not only eat them, but they pee on them and so on and make it inedible for everything else. So they're I think the immediate crisis is something that we as farmers will just have to deal with. I know that there have been programs historically at various times in BC. There isn't one right now, but there have been to allow some funding mechanisms for building storage facilities like high fences around haystacks and various things like that. And I think that we'll probably have to do that ourselves or whatever the case may be. But the downside to this picture is that our farming efforts are really quite small in Fort Nelson at this point, and we don't need another impediment that's a really expensive one to deal with. And so trying to find the middle ground, I'm positive if we would poll the people of Fort Nelson that most people would like to see the elk where it is awesome to have elk around, and I get that. And what I would like to recommend that we do is that we start advocating for a cow elk season, a hunting season. I think that would be a real benefit. We actually, along with the hosting of 170 elk in that one place this fall, we hosted an awful lot of hunters were banging on my son-in-law's doors, wondering if they can drive out in the fields, you know, to see if everyone's after the elusive 6-point elk that's hiding in the creek bed while there's 170 other animals grazing in the field. And I think that from hunting, local meat supply, it would be a really useful thing, because the way that elk respond to having a hunting season is that they start to be a lot more, they spread out a lot more. They're not near as destructive in their, as what they are when they're in a large herd, because they're always looking over their shoulders. And I think that I'm in favor of advocating something like that. It's very expensive, by the way, to put up game fence. And just a historical tidbit, that remember that this was first a much larger issue for Toad River. Long before the elk really moved in here, they moved into Toad River. And so you remember that the Stone Mountain have a nice hayfield in front of their lodge and so on. And that hayfield used, when it was first developed, it produced around 200 of those round bales per year. And then the elk infilled, and eventually they were getting 20 bales a year off of, in a summer harvesting, getting 20 bales off. And they bit the bullet themselves at that time, and they built their own fence around the whole place. And their hayfield went back to producing almost 300 round bales per year. And that was without reseeding it and so on. So it just tells you that the elk have the potential. Left unchecked, their numbers are going to explode from where they are right now. And as the farmers who have worked the most diligently to create good hayfields are now the target of those elk, because they can tell the difference too between a really good meal and dry wild grass that has no nutrition. So we see the crisis coming more in the future than what we're having to deal with right now. And so I just want to try to convince us as a group, or let you know, start thinking about this idea that aiming for a hunting license, I believe, is a starting point in how to mitigate the growth of the herds. Just so that to put it into context here, remember we've had studies around caribou survival, and one of the and caribou survival and numbers. One of the numbers that is batted around in the caribou is the survival rate of the calves on the year. And that is a very important factor in determining the survivability or the growth or sustainability of a herd. And we look at them for quite a few years. The numbers they were using was roughly 8% survival rate of the calves. So in a cattle ranch, we try to have 96% or better. In a wild caribou herd, if you have only 8%, it's little wonder that the sustainability is not there, that you're gradually watching a diminishing of this. But when we look in our fields, the elk are not hiding. They're right out there to look at and to count and to ask them questions and so on. they're not afraid of tractors. You can actually go out and drive in amongst them and look at them that way because they are so used to the equipment. And so we estimated of that 170, there were 65 calves from this past year. And then of the 170, there would also be a bunch of immatures, both male and female, that would make up another 50 or 60 from the previous year, 50 anyway from the previous year. And then there's all the older cows that had these 60 calves. So you've got this number. It's a snapshot into how fast they're multiplying and growing. And one of the I'm just about done. One of the difficulties that we see that's actually great, our local hunters and trappers have been doing a fabulous job of capturing lots of wolves over the last quite a few years. The wolf call is important for the caribou. It's important to have moose in the area. So the lack of wolves is also contributing to this imbalance of having elk that are not being
Eaton.
being eaten by wolves. So anyway, there we go, eh? So I just wanted to introduce this. Think about it and ask your friends around. Maybe we could get to the point where we did some kind of a poll. I already know lots of hunters want to eat the elk if they can get their hands on them. So advocating for a season makes sense for me, but I'm open to other ideas.
So, it's a problem, but it's not a problem that hasn't been studied before,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I mean, the piece has all kinds of data with respect to the different programs that they put into place. And so we should be able to ask a question. And
I think
I
so.
suspect the Northeast Roundtable is maybe the place to start, bring that up there. And they've got a meeting coming up pretty soon, I think. The 12th, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that'd
that's
be
like the
great.
day after tomorrow. So, potentially we can, if not onto that agenda, then the next agenda for them and just see whether or not we can get the Ministry of Environment involved to come forward and participate in at least for themselves to identify if it's a problem or not. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can tell them it's a problem. They won't do anything till they identify it's a
Yeah,
problem
exactly.
on their own.
Absolutely.
But we can, I think that's probably a start is to bring that up. And I'm not sure I'll make it because I'll be in Saskatchewan, but I think Lisa will be there. So Lisa can bring that up as a start to introduce it. Okay, good. You're welcome. Is there anybody else? Seeing nothing, public news, the public, any of the public? No? Okay, then we are adjourned and we will come back at 6:30. Thank you very much.